I make my own rules, one Bonko party at a time.
I write history and I read celebrities. I am JMZ.
Life is a classroom, and I'm here to teach.
Welcome back to the second half of our episode with Gwendolyn Fowler. You're here with me, Casey.
Dr. J. Mill, the millionairess, sometimes the trillionairess.
Max Spear, nothing's changed.
So we're going to continue this Bravo talk. Apparently, Dolores Catania and Teresa Giudice are in a feud, and Dolores says that it's time that Teresa exit the show, that she's been on too long. It's time for someone else. So I don't know. Is RHONJ the type of show that can keep going without Teresa? Would they need a full reboot and cast entirely different? Because I feel like it's been 10 years worth of storylines that is just Teresa, her family, and how people relate to Teresa and her family. What do we think?
I would ask the question differently. Did Orange County survive this past season without Vicky in a permanent role?
The difference, I think, is that Orange County was never about the family network, right? So even like bringing the Manzos in, right? It was the Manzos and the Giudices. And so that was still about the family dynamics and, you know, friends of that particular family. And so Teresa is like the last remaining original member. And I wonder if there's actually depth in any kind of storylines without her.
Well, just like you can't have a holiday party without sprinkle cookies.
Yeah.
I don't know if RHONJ can exist without Teresa, though I am tired of seeing her particular storyline. I think she's transcended every way she can. She's, divorced this husband who was very horrible to her.
Yeah.
The plot does not get bigger with Teresa. It does not become more dramatic than Joe being arrested in ICE custody. Whether or not the kids are able to see him, then he gets deported. It just doesn't. She's not going to come up with anything that's more gripping than that.
Than being convicted of fraud and then going to have to go to
jail.
Mm-hmm.
There's not going to be guess who got convicted of fraud a second time.
And I gotta say, I'm really sorry, but I find that a lot of the RHONJ women are just kind of boring. When was the last time Melissa Gorga really had a storyline other than opening Envy?
Did you say Alyssa or Melissa?
I said Melissa, right? When was the last time Melissa had a legitimate storyline, right? Because it's either been Melissa and Teresa fighting and the entire cast, from family and friend dynamics trying to put the family back together, or, then she opened Envy, but then this last season it was crickets, nothing happening.
It's definitely a broader thing, I think, that's happening across all Bravo shows at the moment, where older or more seasoned housewives, I should say,
more experienced
housewives. Seasoned was supposed to be a double entendre, though. So.
I got it, but
bum. See, I can do that too. More the oh god, I was gonna make a point too.
It's hard to think when that baby's in your arms.
Yeah.
I feel like there's just they become so aware of the camera edits and the camera on them that I think they get to a certain number of years on film, and you kind of have to reboot everything. Now, I think the interesting thing about someone like Ramona or Teresa is that they don't really seem to necessarily adjust for how the edit will be or how the audience will view them, right? You always get what you get.
I'm going to poop my pants on the camera. Check this out, editors.
But yeah, I think I think we might be time. It might be time for a whole reset. I don't know what's happening with RHONJ. I don't know what's happening with RHONY.
most of the franchises, need a giant facelift.
I just want the kind of drama that there used to be. I'm done with...
You want people who are unconscious about the cameras there.
I want constant messiness. I mean, Jennifer is messy on RHONJ.
Yeah, Jennifer is messy. We like Sutton in this household.
I do like Sutton.
Yeah.
I like Sutton. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just need... Like,
I was like ready to march to Denise Richards' house when she stood up Garcelle, making Garcelle drive all the way to Thousand Oaks.
Yeah,
that's like so uncool. But anyway, so we're gonna do a lot more alleging with Gwendolyn Fowler in this half of the episode. So sit back, relax, and welcome to Historians on Housewives. Okay. So now we're going to head back into the interview, if that's okay with you, Gwendolyn.
Yep, that's perfect.
So we're going to start out with maybe the easiest or the toughest question, depending on you. Who is your favorite Bravo celebrity and why?
So I thought deeply about this, and I actually went by who I follow on Instagram. Because I don't follow a lot of Bravo celebrities on Instagram. So my favorite is Dr. Heavenly from Married to Medicine. I don't have any deep explanation. I just find her very entertaining. I like that she has a successful business, that she actually has like a chain of dentist offices. I find that fascinating. And also the fact that she's from Miami and her mouth has like no filter and still, she's like maybe almost 50 and her response to everything is your mama. Like, I just find it hilarious. Like, there's a part of me that wants to be that like candid and outspoken, but cannot be.
I love watching her with her daughter on the camera.
I love her daughter. She's hilarious. And her daughter reads her all the time.
When she caught her husband,
Dr. Damien,
at the strip club last season,
when they were on vacation,
she comes in with the orange juice and just starts interrogating him at like 9 a.m. It was one of the funniest reads I've ever seen on the network.
Max must have watched that particular scene like a dozen times, and he just cackled so hard. And it was so funny. It was like the most loaded question about like, do you want some orange juice, right?
It's so aggressive, and Dr. Damien really looks like a deer in headlights. Like, he knows he's caught, but he's like trying to keep some semblance of the lie going.
Like this moment where he's like, oh, I'm getting juice. Oh, I'm not getting that kind of juice, right? Like, it was so funny.
Yeah, and I appreciate that the guys are really trying to save him, but
yeah,
I mean, we're going to see it anyway. So, also, I have a runner-up, Eileen Davidson. She's no longer a housewife, but I really, really liked her on Housewives of Beverly Hills. Do you guys have like a little name for that one? Or?
I don't think we do. Do we?
Have a what?
A name?
Have a name like RHONJ, RHOA? Do we have a name?
I think it's just
Beverly
Beverly.
Hills?
I think it's just.
I mean, I guess
it's just Beverly Hills.
Well, I guess since it's
Beverly Hills,
because it's Beverly Hills, it might just be Rob. The H is silent, which might, because it's Beverly Hills, might be brand specific.
I like Rob. So yes, Eileen Davidson used to be on RHOBH. She was a soap star when she played Ashley on Young and the Restless.
And Kristen on Days of Our Lives. Let us not forget.
Yes.
Oh, let us not forget. Married to Tony DeMera.
Right. I just really like Eileen. First of all, I think she's a really good friend because there are some seasons where Lisa Rinna should have been left by herself. I'm thinking of like that whole Munchausen situation. Where Lisa Rinna, and even I think, Eileen wasn't on that season, but the season where she said, Kim Richards was near death and not sober anymore. Like there's some.
Oh, but there was that scene where she's then on the couch with Eileen, being like, Eileen, I didn't think I said it, but Eileen, I said it, and Eileen's like, she has like such a body reaction, and then like Eileen's cameo is like, Lisa Rinna. I love her. I know she means well, right? So it's like she's even navigating those politics of good friendship while she's like, ugh, Lisa,
Right.
like, look
Like,
at this
she likes
mess
to
you're making.
Right. She like defends the person, but not her actions, which is interesting. And she's still a friend to Lisa Rinna. But also, I just like that she was really good at calling these women out, like cutting through the BS and just like plainly stating something. And I really, really like that interaction between her and Kim Richards at one of the reunions where Kim tried to like diss soap opera actresses. As not like good actresses or something. And she's like, well, actually, soap opera acting is very difficult. And like Andy backed her up. And I was like, good for you, Eileen. Like, good for you. So I really enjoy her also.
She was really,
and Eileen is
so
a working
classy.
actress.
Yes, she works.
Yeah, it was like
She's a working actress and she's classy.
Yeah. I do miss Eileen.
I miss her. Mm-hmm.
So you're a historian of inequality, currently researching welfare activism in Detroit. How did you come to this project?
I'm going to try to like make this as short as possible, but in general, I would say I came to the welfare rights movement kind of by accident. I read Johnny Tillman, who was maybe the most famous face from the welfare rights movement. I read her article in this magazine called Welfare is a Women's Issue. I think I read it in undergrad, and I'm just a naturally curious person. I went to Google, tried to find out all the information I could, and Google wasn't giving me enough information. And so when I decided I was going to go to get my master's, I knew that I wanted to write about Johnny Tillman, and that's when I started reading all of the welfare rights literature. And then when I got to Rutgers, I kind of realized I was at a loss as far as primary sources go. I had some issues getting to the there's an archive. Where do I start with this? Okay, so the welfare rights movement, they had an organization called the National Welfare Rights Organization. Their papers are at Howard University, and I had some issues trying to get access, and so I had to pivot as far as what I'm going to write about when we don't have any primary sources. And Dr. Donna Murch, she was like, you might try Detroit. And I was like, So I kind of went through Kremlin Addison's book, Welfare Warriors, and was just looking for stuff about Detroit. And I found this woman named Mamie Blakely, who was a welfare rights activist from Detroit, part of the West Side Mothers. And then I started following her, and that led me to Wayne State University's archive at the Walter P. Reuther Library. The West Side Mothers actually have their own archive, and I was not able to go there because of Rona, but I was able to request scans, and so I kind of just like jumped into this organization. So it started as like curiosity, and now it's probably going to be my dissertation. Thanks to Dr. Murch.
Well, that's leads into my next question. So you touched on the West Side Mothers of Detroit. Can you tell us a little bit more about them? And in some ways, what exactly captivates you about them as well? Because there's that moment as a historian that something grabs you. And it sounds like you've been grabbed by it because you just said it might become your dissertation.
Right. So West Side Mothers was started in 1966 in Detroit, Michigan. The two founders were Selma Good. She's still alive actually. She's a white Jewish woman from Detroit who was the research director at the Detroit chapter of the Congress of Racial Equality, and Gloria Brown, who the Black woman who was the chairperson for the Detroit chapter of CORE from, I believe, 1964 to 1967. So a welfare recipient approached them about how to get access to benefits that she was supposed to have, and they ended up creating a group. They started meeting at the CORE office. Eventually, both of those women left CORE, and so they started meeting at churches around the city. Eventually, their membership bloomed and they became like one of 13 welfare rights organizations in Detroit. And one interesting thing about them, out of many, is that Michigan was the only state during the 1970s to increase welfare benefits every year through the decade. And the West Side Mothers take credit for that. They're very tenacious. I mean, they were founded in 1966, and in the same year, they sued the Detroit Public Service companies for requiring certain citizens who lived in poor zip codes to have a deposit or put a deposit down. And they actually won. So I think part of my fascination with them is just how they kind of hit the ground running. But also it's the fact that they have an archive and like everything was written down. And when I started doing research, I think I just did a general search on like newspapers.com. All of this information, all of these articles came my way from the Detroit Free Press. So they were written about quite often in the in Detroit Free Press. And so I think just the amount of information that I got without digging that much, I think is what really has kept me going. Because I'm like, I can't imagine yet what else I'm going to find when I start really like getting into more primary sources. And also, the fact that like they're still active. A lot of welfare rights groups after the National Welfare Rights Organization kind of disbanded. A lot of local welfare rights groups kind of stopped working, but Michigan Welfare Rights is that organization is still up and running. West Side Mothers is still up and running, and Selma Good is still kicking. I believe she's in her 90s.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that was going to be my follow-up question, which is, how did the West Side Mothers impact the welfare rights movement? Is it too soon in your research to talk about that, or do you feel comfortable talking about it?
I'm not super comfortable talking about it, mostly because I still need to do a whole bunch of secondary source reading as far as like the history of Detroit. But I know that Detroit was known as Black Power City, and it seems as if the neighborhoods in Detroit were just kind of ripe for activism, and so for community activism, I'll say. And so I think the longevity of the West Side Mothers has to do with that fact that Detroit is just like a place for activism. They're still extremely active with water issues, and if you really want to look up somebody super dynamic, Maureen Taylor is she's in charge. She's just amazing. And so like I kind of understand why they're so important and how they impacted the movement, but also I still need to do more research. I mean, also another thing, there was an issue. George Wiley is someone, he founded the National Welfare Rights Organization. He was kind of this like Black middle class guy, kind of knew how to talk to white people. He did a lot of the fundraising, but he also really tried to control these women. And what I noticed about welfare recipients turned activists in general is that you cannot control them. These women were, essentially relegated to the bottom of society as poor Black women on welfare. And they have the most radical critique of all of the isms: capitalism, sexism, racism, everything. And they were in control of their own groups. And George Wiley really tried to come in and hire someone to run the Michigan Welfare Rights Group. And West Side Mothers were like, you can't come to Michigan and do that. Like, we were successful before you guys got here, and we'll be successful without you. And they were.
Wow, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about it maybe a little bit at the beginning, but could we talk a little bit more about how Dolores and Margaret from RHONJ provide relevant examples for understanding your work? And maybe if you could go into some of these examples, that would be great.
So I think I see it more with Dolores because she was the one who had this organized fundraiser for a homeless shelter, a women's shelter in Inglewood that primarily served Black women and their children. And I think my issue with watching that was I find that sometimes the charitable works that are displayed on all of these franchises are, with the exception of like Bethany Frankel, I think, and with the exception of like Vanderpump and all the stuff she does for dogs, I think it's like very performative. You know, it's just kind of, well, we just want to look good. And I have an issue with you doing that when you're looking at African Americans. And knowing what I know about welfare rights activists, I don't think, like, I can't imagine, if the West Side Mothers had a shelter, they would let some woman come in and on camera kind of talk about how much she's going to help them and, oh, I love helping people. You know, like, no, they would have accepted the check and said, like, you don't need to be here. And so I find that whole situation kind of icky and like exploitative. And also when I watched it, I knew someone who was at the shelter and I was like shocked. I was like, oh my goodness. So yeah, it just kind of like hit home and I was just extremely uncomfortable with the entire situation.
Wow. Well, I actually agree with you about some of the quote unquote charity moments are performative and they are really very uncomfortable. I'm going to use Casey's example. Casey likes to use the example of Luann when she went to the was it the YMCA?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was the Y. It was the Y in New York City.
And she talked about the little girl being chubby. I mean, can we talk about that for a minute? How was that helpful?
Right.
Or that they could grow up and like the way that she was talking about, aspirations and growing up, it was so completely clueless as to the community she was talking to or even any sort of understanding of her own privilege.
Can we just do a little bit of segue on how much I dislike Luann de Lesseps?
Go right ahead.
It might be a regular. This might be a regular segment on the show. Is all I was gonna say. Because yes.
I mean, are you going to start with the Afro? Where do you want to start? By all means, you've got the floor.
I want to start with after the Afro. I think it was the Afro the same season she got arrested, or was that after?
I think the Afro came first, and I think that was maybe the season she was maybe marrying and divorcing Tom, but the arrest came the season or two after.
Okay. Yeah, I actually want to start
Carol
with her.
was still on with the Afro. So
right. You're right. Okay, I remember. Yeah, so Luann's arrest was on videotape, and she got out of her handcuffs and assaulted a police officer. And in this time where we're watching Black people get murdered by police officers, every time I think about that, I get like palpitations. And the fact that like Luann doesn't take it seriously, has no kind of idea about how serious it was. I mean, she could have done a lot of jail time. She didn't. She was on parole. She didn't take her parole seriously at all. There's that scene with her, and is it Dorit, I think, at her parole, and she's kind of laughing and joking, and they're supposed to be like packaging soup, and she's eating the soup, and like it's ha ha ha, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I hate to like say white privilege over and over and over again. I feel like everyone says it all the time, but like you were looking at it right there, because if Luann was a Black woman, she wouldn't have never gotten to court. She would have never gotten to parole. You know what I'm saying? Like he would have shot her. And so it's just, Luann just makes my blood boil.
To kind of extend what you're saying about Luann, you can see it in the RHONJ fans too. I had gone onto Etsy a week ago, looking for like a Bravo birthday / housewarming thing for Dr. J. Mill. And one of the things that's coming up.
You mean me?
You! I know. I can't wait. I think you'll be so excited when it finally comes. But I was appalled because, you know, there had been some joke on this new season of RHONJ made about, you know, how there's a certain number of the women now who all have mug shots, right? And so, you know, Tinsley, Luann, and Leah. And so, you know, some of the RHONJ fans on Etsy are now selling the mug shots of these white housewives as coasters. And I was like, just absolutely sick to my stomach. Like the way that people don't understand this dynamic and think about it as, you know, something for like leisure entertainment trading.
Yeah, jail is like a fun club to be in if you're white.
Yeah, it was
Right.
It was so shocking to see that.
And Kelly has an opinion too.
Yeah, he
Kelly
took
has
that
an opinion in the background.
He was like, cough, cough, you know, like adding this in.
Well, before I move on, I want to make sure that we've exhausted your hatred and displeasure with Luann. Does this mean you won't go to her cabaret show? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Oh, that's the other thing. No, I completely forgot about the cabaret. I'm so upset that I don't want to get like too deep, but like I'm a music person, okay? Like I love music and I listen to singers, you know? I love the Clark sisters. I feel like gospel singers are probably like the best singers you'll ever hear just because they grow up singing in church and church audiences are brutal.
Agreed.
So you have to be good. And the fact that Luann gets up there and sounds terrible and actually maybe believes that she sounds good because people keep telling her she sounds good. I'm like, what is going on here? I almost feel like I'm in like a fun house and like, you know, I'm in another dimension watching something else going on. And I'm like, this can't be real life. And I don't know if you guys remember when Patti LaBelle was on Watch What Happens Live, like all of those years ago. And she like looked straight at the camera and she was like, Luann, Kim, you're beautiful women. Stay in your lane. Do not sing ever again. Swear to God. That's exactly what she said. I'm like, you should have took Patti LaBelle's advice. Like, this is terrible. It's terrible. And it adds like this like super like weird personality that she has because like people actually buy tickets to like watch this.
The way that she does her cabaret and that some of these women think about their, you know, music careers, especially like Luann with the cabaret. I think back to, oh goodness, what was that terrible movie, La La Land?
Yeah.
You know, like,
yes.
Let this white guy tell you about this history of music and like be the best at performing this genre. And I was, you know, it like that is Luann to me.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling's here to save jazz.
You know, is like my parallel to Luann and her music career. Doing cabaret in the clubs.
I will say Money Can't Buy You Class is catchy.
I mean, that's the only thing.
That's the only thing. That's it.
So this is going to be an extremely abrupt transition, but I did want to make sure we got all our Luann feelings out. So this is going to be an abrupt transition. So, you know, listeners, brace yourself for this very abrupt transition. But I think it works. So, Gwendolyn, you mentioned to us that one of your projects includes actually doing a family history, and it involves research on Mohawk Indians and the relationship to enslaved Africans in New York. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? You seem to have an array of interests, so I just want to make sure we highlight them.
Yeah, so this is like the family history part's not new. I've been trying to like patch that together for maybe like 5 years at this point. But the Mohawk Indian part is new, and I kind of just started voicing my interest in it to one of the professors that I had last semester. But my grandmother, I've always heard stories that she was half Mohawk and that her mother was full-blooded Mohawk. And I heard that from my grandmother's brother, Uncle Billy, who unfortunately now has kind of fully succumbed to dementia. But before he did, I was able to talk to him about that and get a little bit of information. So that's where it started. And when I actually started just with my Google search before because I haven't really done a bunch of research about it yet. But when I started with my Google search, I started with just like a Wikipedia article on Mohawk Indians, and I found one footnote about Mohawk Indians in the 16th and 17th century, basically taking in fugitive slaves. And so I want to scratch at that a lot more. Of course, I've read like Taya Miles' Ties That Bind, but that's kind of a different history, and I'm not. It's a different history, basically, and so I want to. Yeah, I just want like more at this point. I just need to like do some more reading, but that's like my dream project. You know,
this can be your after tenure project.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
You can dabble and enjoy. Well, I don't want to step over the toes of your advisors, but so let's continue with the Detroit Mothers as your dissertation project. And this can be your kind of after project, because family history, people don't realize family history takes a lot of time. Yeah. Ancestry.com makes it look like it's so simple, but it takes a lot of time. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir. Some of our listeners are historians by training, so I know I'm preaching to the choir. Okay, well, I'm glad you explained to us your interest in that. That sounds fascinating. We'll look for both that project and your other projects.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Casey, what's up?
So now we're going into a new H segment. We're calling this Allegedly. So this was inspired by our desire to critically fabulate about backstories in the Bravo universe.
Critical fabulation, I think I would liken it to what Aisha Finch says, imagine responsibly. So you don't want to use the fragments of the archive to re-traumatize or re-victimize the people you were speaking about. So in putting this game together, allegedly, and I love it, is that we are going to critically fabulate or imagine response. Thank you, Ella.
Ella, we're talking about Sadia Hartman and critical fabulation. Shush.
Ella just wants to get in on the conversation. So, where was it? Thanks, Ella. I lost my cue.
So,
the point being is
we're imagining responsibly about the past.
We're imagining responsibly. And in fact, maybe critical fabulation is too highbrow for what we're about to do.
Yes.
What we are going to do...
I agree.
Isn't it? We're going to do a compilation of Harvey and Charles from TMZ. So this will be like allegedly, maybe with JMZ. Let's brand it. Allegedly with JMZ. Where we all critically...
we responsibly imagine.
This, I think, is this is definitely the only podcast that exists where Sadia Hartman's critical fabulation can sit comfortably next to TMZ and Harvey.
I mean, I have a gift. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. I have a gift for putting these unlike things together. But we're going to take it a little... I mean, I think that using Sadia Hartman is a great way to elevate us. But we're going to stay in the messy. Like, I think we need to do we need a combination of highbrow and lowbrow imagining responsibly.
We got to remember that this is Bravo we're talking about.
Yeah. We're citing Black woman here by telling everybody that this technique comes from Sadia Hartman, but we are applying it to like nothing that important.
Exactly. We're embracing the JMZ model. So let's go. What are you going to hit us with?
So Gwendolyn wanted to discuss Giselle Bryant's relationship with her ex-husband, Jamal Bryant. Word on the street is that they renewed their romance for the cameras. And allegedly, Jamal Bryant just had a baby boy with an unnamed woman from his congregation. Now, Jamal Bryant is the pastor at the New Birth Missionary Baptist Church.
Which has a sordid history already.
Oh, really?
Tell it, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, tell it.
So Bishop Eddie Long. Bishop Eddie Long was the former pastor. He was having, I don't want to call them relations. He was sexually abusing young boys for years. I believe the congregation knew about it and they paid their tithes anyway and made him very. And I think when all of it really started coming out, he actually got sick and died of some type of cancer, like very quickly. And so Jamal Bryant was hired as their new pastor. And Jamal Bryant has a sordid history also with cheating on Giselle and having outside kids.
Right. This isn't a new storyline.
Right. No, not at all.
Right. And didn't he have a child with a woman while he was married to Giselle? Or was that right after the divorce?
From his Maryland congregation.
Yes. So, Giselle's playing, I feel like, a very, dangerous game, because even if you are doing it for, to have a storyline, which I agree, last season, I think Giselle was just like the instigator. She didn't really do much, but just started a lot of stuff. And, she did need a storyline, but this one would involve your children because their father is now back in the picture. And maybe it would have went okay if this new news had not come out. But, Jamal did it again. He has another baby, allegedly.
Well, and Giselle is saying that, like, no, it's completely false. So what do we think the truth is here?
Let me tell you what happened here. Giselle and Jamal began again having intimate relations. He, if I may, pastor put it on her, and she got caught up, and she sincerely believed they were reconciling. I don't think that storyline was false. I think she was happy, and they were reconciling. She didn't know that he was up to his old tricks outside of their relationship. I really think that she sincerely thought they were getting back together. And I don't think that he thought that. I think he was just, doing, oh, Jessica, don't give this read to the audience. I think he might have been doing what men love to do, which is to keep women on a string, especially if you're an ex or an ex-wife. Mm-hmm. And it came back to bite him. So I don't take anything from Giselle. I don't think she was lying. It's unfortunate that she continues to deal with this ne'er-do-well, if you will. With all respect, Pastor. With all respect, Pastor.
Oh, with all respect, and with all respect to Giselle, she's not first lady material. I don't know. I believe that, like,
in case you didn't know, Giselle.
Church, and I grew up in a Baptist church, and I've seen first ladies of Baptist churches, and I don't get that from Giselle at all. So I think she was better off with the ex-football player or whatever he was. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's more her speed, but like first lady Giselle is just not realistic.
Can you talk a little bit more about the politics of being a first lady to a congregation like this? Like what that would look like? Or is that too much?
First, let me just add this, and then Gwendolyn, you take it away. First of all, she would have to wear a prayer shawl over her legs when she came into the congregation, because short skirts on the front row, not a good thing.
No.
Not a good thing. And normally the prayer shawl is reserved for women who are not married to the pastor. They tell women who sit on the front row they need to have a prayer shawl because, well, need I say more? So just the fact that her skirts are too short. I love Giselle, but I might agree with you on this one. So Gwendolyn, by all means, take it away.
I also love Giselle. I also find her very entertaining. Like I said, she's not first lady material. When I think of like my first lady at my church, I don't want to get too much into like the politics of respectability, but it's there. Mm-hmm. She's just not, she's too, like materialistic, very like into her looks. Plus the fact that first ladies have just a whole bunch of duties in the church. As far as like, they help the deaconesses, at least in my church, the deaconesses are, wait, do you guys know deacons and deaconesses? They're supposed to be like, pillars in the church to help run the church. So the deaconesses are usually the wives of the deacons. And so the deaconesses in my church are the ones that do all of like the hospital ministry and go visit people, stuff like that. I can't see Giselle doing things like that. I can't see her leading like prayer groups or being in charge of any auxiliaries in the church. And you're supposed to be a type of role model for young women in the church. I think in the way that like you dress and the way you speak, and you're supposed to be very ladylike and polite and bougie, maybe. Well, Giselle's bougie, but it's like a muted bougie that's not based on what you're wearing. It's based on your behavior more. Like Giselle just doesn't kind of fit into it, and I don't know how she did it for as long as she did.
Do we know if Giselle met Jamal in a congregation? Like, was she already a first lady?
You mean what? No, I don't even know this answer. You mean was she already was she already kind of first lady material?
No, I'm saying like, was she a first lady at some point? Like, did they meet because she was one of his congregants? Does anybody know?
That I don't know. I don't know that part, but I do know she was the first lady of his church in Maryland, because that was part of her bio leading into the first season of Potomac. Oh, and I had to go and do my Google research at that point, saying, what is the church? Where's Jamal Bryant? Why do I know his name?
Does this
because I lived in Maryland for a while.
Does this add to like the, I don't know, the drama and like the deepness of that affair that she's, first lady of a congregation when it comes out that he's impregnated another congregant?
I think the only way it would is if he agrees to be on the show, because they've always treated Jamal Bryant as separate. Like we don't get a lot on him. You have to go do your research. I mean, that would be a great storyline if he stayed on the show. But I also,
I was going to say, what would you think about the allegedly aspect, like before the cameras roll, like before she's a housewife and this is what happens to her? Do you think it makes it right, like the community aspect of like so many people knowing and like watching it happen in front of her face, right? Like, does that like fuel like the resentments and all that? Like, how do they even get to the point where they're coming back together after something like that?
So let me tell you what happened.
So much confidence.
Giselle was lonely. It happened. When you're lonely, you're a Black woman in particular of a certain age, and even if you're of a certain age, income, and beauty status even, it's not easy to find someone. And so they're in contact talking about the kids, and he's familiar. And they go and have adult relations a few times. And they get back together because he's comfortable and he knows her. And so she believes they've gotten back together. So my first answer is also my ending answer. That is how he got back into her life. Dating out here is hard. She's familiar with him. They have kids. I imagine, I've heard his sermons. He's probably quite dynamic. I mean, I think he's probably allegedly the ultimate hero is trickster, right? I can see how it happened.
And also, I think Giselle might have been looking at Robin and Juan's relationship. She's close with the both of them. She's known them a very long time, and they kind of got back together after Juan cheating for however many years. And maybe she was just kind of like, well, maybe it'll work out. Especially because Juan was was he in the NBA or whatever? He was an athlete. Yeah, and notoriously athletes cheat on their wives, and you could make an argument for Black preachers also in infidelity, but I don't want to go there.
I don't either. That's why I'm like, I'm not gonna go so high, so fly so close to the sun. I don't want my wings to burn. But there's a whole. So what we're trying to talk around is that there is a whole other backstory when we start talking about first ladies.
Yeah,
and their husbands.
Basically, I'll just say pastors also have groupies, like athletes,
right?
And
which goes back to wearing the prayer shawls. A friend of mine, she went to counseling before she married her husband, who's a preacher, and she was actually told about, multiple groupies and how to kind of guard against them. But that's why they have women who sit in the front row. You usually have to have a prayer shawl on because, skirts might be short, and use your imagination, allegedly.
Allegedly.
So
yeah, I think, Giselle just might have been feeling some of that, because if Juan could come back and, him and Robin are engaged again, I believe, maybe she really thought he changed. I don't know.
Right. And why not? I mean, honestly, why can't people, people do change.
Right.
And so I can see how it happens. I mean, no one wants to have a divorce. No one, well, unless they have someone in the wings, but no one really wants their family to be dissolved if there's still something worth salvaging. But she fell in love with him for a reason. Again, I think he's probably very charming and charismatic, and he's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Casey, I don't know if that did anything the way you wanted us to. Was that critical fabulation? Was that our rant about?
I think it was an excellent allegedly. I think we had a lot of points. I think we went to some places that were kind of analytical, and we got to be a little bit messy too. And anytime you can be analytical and messy is great.
Excellent.
So, Gwendolyn, can you tell us what's next for you and what you want people to know about your upcoming work, and how can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
All right. So I'll start with getting in touch with me. I just started like an academic Twitter. I got rid of like my ratchet one. And so you can follow me on Twitter @_Gwen Fowler. I'm working with Dr. Gross doing some stuff for the Association of Black Women Historians. So
excellent! Yay!
So I anticipate, being more active and like pushing lots of stuff that way. What's next is lots more reading. I have a ton of research to dive into about Detroit. I'm also in the process of trying to hire a research assistant in Detroit to kind of go through the archive for me. And trying to get as much rest and relaxation before whatever type of school year we'll have in September, starts. And I'm getting a puppy. Yay!
Yay! What kind?
Alaska Opso.
Aww.
What kind?
Alaska Opso.
Oh,
they're really cute.
In fur balls, yeah. So that's pretty much it.
Congratulations! Welcome to.
Thank you.
Welcome to new puppy. It's so exciting.
I'm very excited.
I will have to say that when we got our Ella, who was wooing earlier, I kept telling Max that I was going to get us a puppy after I sat my exams, and instead I found her almost 3 months before the exam, and I just came home one day with a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
So Jessica is also kind of an advisor to a puppy,
Yes, it was so sad. My puppy had just passed away, and Casey came to my office so excited. Oh, and we got a puppy, and our puppy can play with Morrison, and she's going on and on and on. And I just looked at her and I said, my dog died last weekend, and it was so horrible. It was a horrible moment.
Like, wah.
Yeah, but their dog is so cute. So I borrow their dog on occasion. So we're definitely doggy friendly at Historians on Housewives.
Yeah, we are definitely anti Dorit's dog abuse here.
Hey, with Dorit and a dog, do you think maybe her kids antagonize that dog? Like, I have a theory about that.
I think Kelly just said that he agrees with you.
Yeah, the dog was like a little, I think it was a Chihuahua, and you have two kids that don't seem to know boundaries that well, at least from what's depicted on the show. So, like, I can totally see, and PK doesn't exactly seem like the warmest husband either, like...
No, you don't think?
Yeah, no, I know. It's going to be a controversial take here. So, like, yeah, I think that, like, they did not have the patience that is required to, like, raise a puppy.
not at all. I'm worried about their children too.
Right. I mean, hello, let's start there.
Yeah. What type of terror is she raising?
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I love that you have helped us now name RHOB for what it is.
RHOB. Yeah.
Rob.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed myself.
As always, you can find us at historiansonhousewives.com, where you can propose your own episode topic, ask us questions, and send us feedback. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HistoriansH. And don't forget that you can like and review the podcast on your podcast platform. Thank you, Gwendolyn Fowler. This show was brought to you with the support by Barbara and Mark Spear, Saddleback Community College, Christina Hinkle, Christina Gamberpour, Judd Merlasky, Pete Murray, Yvonne Bellardez, Cody Baker, Molly Callahan, Dr. Joaquin Galarza, Courtney Crow, Laura Loper, and Luis Asio de Dios. And remember, scholars do Bravo too.